Hello and welcome to Ashford.com. You are watching an interesting video on systematic medical reviews analysis carried out by medical researchers to look across numerous studies for an answer, rather than just one. Please read this disclaimer carefully. According to a new study conducted by health economists at the University of East Anglia and the Centre for Diet and Activity Research in the UK, walking or cycling to work is better for people's mental health than driving. Systematic reviews are a form of analysis carried out by medical researchers to synthesize all the available evidence on a particular question, such as how effective a drug is. As opposed to providing a conclusion based on a single study, they instead look across numerous studies for the answer. Meta-analyses are a subset of systematic reviews. They are a pooled numerical analysis of similar studies and can stand alone as well as form part of a systematic review. Researchers carrying out proper systematic reviews are usually led by panels of experts, and the work follows a set protocol for the detailed trawling and analysis of the medical literature. The conclusions of systematic reviews, because they are regarded as a high form of evidence, are used to develop the medical consensus on what the best treatments are. The conclusions also feed into policies set by state healthcare systems, such as whether a new drug should be funded. How are systematic reviews conducted? The treatment choices to be followed by healthcare providers and professionals are laid out by clinical guidelines. These are policies that often come with a contractual obligation. Such influential healthcare decision aids make their recommendations on the basis of systematic reviews of all the available medical evidence. Systematic reviews are a form of analysis carried out by medical researchers. They look across numerous studies for an answer, rather than just one. The way in which these reviews are conducted is, therefore, important to ensure the recommendations they make result in the best healthcare for patients. The Institute of Medicine, for example, sets out detailed step-by-step instructions on how to conduct systematic reviews. One of the bodies following this protocol is the U.S. task force that guides the way public health, health promotion, and disease prevention services do their work. The Cochrane Library is a collection of systematic reviews widely respected by the international medical community, and another example of robust reviews produced against a scientifically rigorous protocol. The below is a description of the steps followed by researchers doing a systematic review, based on those required for the Cochrane Library. You can see that the various data from across all the research are synthesized through a meticulous process. Define the research question. The first and most important decision is to decide what research question will be answered. This is expressed as an aim, for example, to assess the effects of a new drug for a particular health problem in certain types of people. Decide which studies to include in the review. This will be decided in part by the tightly defined research question, but there are further eligibility criteria that must be decided in advance for the inclusion or exclusion of studies. Typically, all the studies need to be of a rigorous design, such as a randomized controlled trial. Search for the studies. The sources consulted, and the search terms used to trawl them are outlined for attack, in the case of Cochrane reviews, by specially trained search coordinators. Attempts should also be made in the search to reveal unpublished studies. Select the studies and collect data from them. Data are extracted from the studies that meet the eligibility criteria set out in advance. The data relevant to the research question being investigated may have to be extracted from buried formats. Assess the risk of bias in the included studies. This is a process to ensure that all the studies reviewed are relevant and reliable. For example, was the randomization in the trial double-blinded? Or was there a risk of bias over which participants were selected for either treatment or comparison? Some studies may be of a lower quality, but they can still be included, so long as this assessment of bias is taken into account. Analyze the data and undertake meta-analyses. This is the core process of a systematic review, the main step towards synthesizing conclusions. Researchers are warned not to jump straight into this process of data analysis without first defining the aims and taking the precautions in the above steps. Address any publication bias. One of the disadvantages of systematic reviews is publication bias, which effectively means study results being cherry-picked. The risk is that a systematic review misrepresents the true effects of treatment, so this step is designed to address that concern. Present the final results of the review, including summary of findings tables. This is the published outcome of the work used by healthcare decision makers. What are the advantages of systematic reviews? The greatest value provided by systematic reviews is in their ability to give a definitive answer, according to the evidence presently available, on a particular question about therapy, prevention, causes of disease, or harm. They are particularly valuable for questions about whether a certain type of drug works and is safe. Systematic reviews involve deep and comprehensive searches of medical databases and journal papers. By summarizing large bodies of evidence, systematic reviews can help busy doctors understand the latest developments in the medical literature. They offer an indication of how well findings can be applied to everyday practice, the generalizability of findings, and they identify knowledge gaps that call for more research. The conclusions of reviews are more reliable than those of individual studies, and consulting them removes the need to try and understand the differences between results from various items of research. Systematic reviews reduce most forms of bias in how conclusions are reached, and their mathematical power and precision are high. Systematic reviews also offer practical advantages. They are less costly to do, relative to starting further new experiments, and they take less time, too. What are the disadvantages of systematic reviews? If the studies included in a systematic review, and especially a meta-analysis, are confined to those that have been published or are readily available, there is a likelihood of the conclusions being unreliable. This is a problem known as publication bias, where the research that appears in the published literature is systematically unrepresentative of all the completed studies in existence because of a failure to find unpublished studies. The usual effect of publication bias is that positive results become exaggerated because neutral or negative results are suppressed. Here are some key points about systematic reviews and meta-analyses. More detail and supporting information is in the body of this article. A systematic review is a synthesis or overview of all the available evidence about a particular medical research question. A systematic review is a synthesis or overview of all the available evidence about a particular medical research question. A meta-analysis is a particular type of systematic review, and can form part of a wider review. It is a statistical analysis that pools the numbers from all the available studies into a medical intervention. Meta-analyses must include studies of a similar design only, usually randomized controlled trial. Good systematic reviews follow a scientifically rigorous protocol and are considered the highest form of evidence. This is why they are used to create authoritative clinical guidelines. They also inform decisions about healthcare funding. There are disadvantages as well as benefits of reviews. The main problem is that while they are more reliable than single studies, they can sometimes exaggerate findings because of a factor known as publication bias. Conclusions of systematic reviews have to be considered within the practicalities of complex individual cases of disease. General recommendations are not always applicable. What causes publication bias? It may be natural for physicians and surgeons to disseminate their successful findings over their failures, but publication bias has other causes, too. In the news, bad stories make it and good news is rare. In medical research, publication bias is similar, but in reverse. Researchers are less likely to submit bad results, so systematic reviews could be prone to analyzing only good results. As well as lying with the decisions of research investigators not to submit negative findings for publication, Bias could also be found in the decisions of journal editors and peer reviewers. The motivation of researchers to publish their results selectively may also be driven by the high recognition that is given in academic circles to the achievement of publication. Publication can be seen as a higher achievement than the completion of the research itself. Another problem can be that funding for research often prioritizes the costs of doing the research. There can be a failure to recognize the effort then needed to analyze and publish the results. This further reduces the motivation for researchers to write up and submit any negative or neutral findings for publication. What is a meta-analysis? A meta-analysis can stand alone or form part of a wider systematic review. It provides what is regarded as the most reliable evidence possible for the effects of medical treatment, especially if it pools results from randomized controlled trials, RCTs. Whereas wider reviews include the results from studies of various scientific designs, a meta-analysis must include studies of similar design only, avoiding heterogeneity between methods. Meta-analyses use statistical analysis to combine the numbers from individual studies, and compute an overall quantitative, numerical, result. Other types of systematic review may include qualitative analysis, which looks into narratively described results rather than the pure numbers approach of a meta-analysis. Meta-analyses are powerful, but not always practical. While meta-analyses are considered to provide the best available evidence in an overview about a medical intervention, even medical statisticians appreciate that the numbers they produce are not always possible to extrapolate into the everyday treatment of disease. We conclude that meta-analysis is not an exact statistical science that provides definitive simple answers to complex clinical problems, say number crunching experts who wrote a review in The Lancet. 1. Ironically, while meta-analyses pool numbers from individual studies, it may be their descriptive value that is higher than their mathematical. They provide clear qualitative conclusions about broad treatment policies, but with quantitative results that, the medical statisticians say, have to be interpreted cautiously. Wider systematic reviews also have a practical limitation. Clinical guidelines drawn from systematic reviews may recommend prescribing antibiotics for a certain type of infection, say, but fail to cite the specific antibiotic, dose, duration, and so on. References.